Welcome to Latent Treasures, a uniquely uplifting podcast filled with inspiring guests to brighten your week. Our show takes inspiration from a lesser-known quote from C.S. Lewis. What we want is not more little books about Christianity, but more little books by Christians on other subjects, with their Christianity latent. While I love books, this is 2020. And let's face it, audio is a lot easier to produce. But you are more than welcome to think of our little podcast as a bunch of little books about various topics, lived by ordinary people. But these people are quite extraordinary in the way their faith drives them and fuels their journey. Journeys on which they're making profound impacts on everyone around them. We hope you'll be blessed by these stories and recognize that inside each of us is the ability to be similarly extraordinary. If you like our show, please subscribe. And if you find any individual show special, please like it and share it freely. Welcome back to another episode of Latent Treasures. This time we dive into a conversation with a financial advisor, master's level CrossFit competitor, and a busy family man. Like so many of our guests, his best qualities are not leveraged for notoriety or fame or profit. He just humbly goes about his day with a passion for God and for being excellent. The result is seen in his family and their centeredness, his business and his very satisfied clients, and his dedicated pursuit to be one of the best athletes in the world at his age. To say he has a motor and incredible levels of determination is only the start of how Jim Losey Jr. inspires, motivates, and leads people around him. He's also a terrific example of a financial advisor who has carefully designed his business model to be in alignment with his clients' needs and objectives, as together they design strategies and find the right tools to make his clients successful. We had some small tech glitches as well as time limitations for this conversation, so this will be part 1 of 2 with Jim. Be sure to check back with us as we work to get part 2 published in the next handful of weeks. Our cover art continues to be provided by Cheyenne Summers and our music by Mary Rogers. You can learn more about them and their work in our full show notes on bethechurch.org. We are very grateful and proud to highlight their talents and generosity in helping make this show possible. But now, without further ado, we welcome Jim Losey Jr. Today we have Jim Losey Jr. joining us. Jim, how are you?
I'm very good, Chad. Thanks for asking.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's now middle of June, towards the end of June. And so far we've both survived coronavirus thus far. Is your business going well regardless of the interruption?
That's a good. It's different. I've got. I have 3-4 staff people working with me, and they're all working from home except one that comes in and makes the coffee and empties the trash in the offices here. And then my job has changed a little bit because everybody's working from home. Somebody's got to go down and get the mail and sort it. So that's a duty I used to have a long time ago that's come back. But as far as the whole enterprise of financial planning and investment advice, it's pretty much the same as it was. More phone work and less in person, face to face, but people still need help with that. So
yeah, that's awesome. And technology, thankfully, I can imagine how difficult this would have been if this happened in the early 90s.
Oh yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm trying to think back to what was going on back then. What did we have? Did we even have email?
Just barely. Email just started, right? We got around with the Thomas Guide.
Yeah, I had one of those in my car.
Yeah. So obviously you've been in the financial advisory, the financial planning business for quite a while. Tell us a little bit about where that started and how that began.
Yeah, I think it's kind of an interesting story. I had a hard time picking a major in college, and when I did, I I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I ended up with a biochemistry degree. So biochemistry, financial planning, a lot of people end up saying, well, how did you make that switch over? And um, the sciences, I think I was well suited to math and science. I think I'm pretty analytical, and it drives my wife nuts. She says, you're so technical. You listen to every word I say and you treat it as if I mean the words I say. So I was pre-med. I graduated with biochemistry degree, and I was working in the hospitals, and I thought I wanted to be a doctor, but I decided I'm going to go and interview some doctors. And this is the analytical process. Let's talk to some doctors before I get into this big medical school um, just system. And I interviewed 7 doctors at the hospital I was working at over lunch, one at a time. And I said, if you had it to do over again, would you, and why? And all but one of them said, don't do it. And they had all kinds of reasons. It was malpractice insurance, medical school debt, the HMO system and the politics there, the politics of the AMA, just all kinds of things. And they basically talked me out of it. So I was sitting there with a biochemistry degree and no real direction, because I decided against medical school. So the only thing I could do at that point was get a job at a biotech company, and I got a job at a large biotech company in the Bay Area. I went to school in San Luis Obispo, so it wasn't that far away, and that was the first 5 years of my career was a biotech company. And I'm sitting there for that whole 5 years going, I know this is not what I like to do. I don't like being in a lab all the time. I see the same people every day. The whole corporate games that you play to get ahead with your manager or whatever, and it's like, I need to look good doing this, or I won't get a raise this year or something like that. But I was working through all of this, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And this is the analytical part again. I end up with 4 things that took me these years to figure out. I said, I wrote these things down as far as what would make the perfect career for me. And they were things like, they weren't like the perfect career. They were things that were aspects of the perfect career. Like, I don't want I want to work with people instead of pipettes. So that was one I remember. I don't want any artificial ceiling that is just corporate imposed on me. I want to be able to have a freedom to go as high as I want, or as far as I want, depending on me, not depending on my manager's opinion of me. I wanted it to be more project oriented instead of something I do let's do the same thing for 40 years and then retire. I wanted to have variety and new things happening. So those were the kind of things they were. I can't remember the 4th one, but I put those on like a pair of glasses, and I said, let's look at different career types. And at the time I looked at pharmaceutical sales, and at the company I was at, they said, well, you can't have a science background to sell pharmaceuticals. You have to have a sales background. That didn't make sense to me, but it does now. I can see why you can learn that tiny part of the drug you're selling, and if you're good at selling, you're going to be more successful than the guy that knows, enough to do well on an MCAT exam.
Yeah.
So I looked at that, and that didn't really pan out. It didn't really fit all of my little criteria either. But then I looked at, I looked at real estate. Got my real estate license in 1989, which was a horrible time to get started in real estate, and I realized it. So I'm not going to do that. Backed out of that. I went on a missionary trip they let me have a leave of absence for a summer, and I went to Amsterdam. I was a missionary in Amsterdam for a summer. I went to Bible school for, I guess it was probably 6 months. I'd go after work. I'd go up to the Simpson Bible College, which was in the Bay Area at the time, San Francisco. And so I took Bible classes there with them. That was interesting. So I was exploring all these things. I took my the exam you need to be a teacher in California. I forgot the name of that because I thought about being a teacher. All of these things were trying my hand at these different things. And finally, my dad, who had been a pilot for 20 years, and he'd been in financial services for, I guess, about 6 or 7 years at that point. I said, Dad, that looks like it fits all of my criteria. And he says, yeah, but I'm too new at it to help you out in any way. You got to do it on your own. And besides, he was in Southern Cal, I was Northern Cal, and I just said, okay. And I started doing research on that, and I narrowed it down to 2 or 3 companies, and I picked a big insurance company, and they would train me and they would teach me about sales and product and stuff like that. And that's how I got started in 1990. But yeah, I'm still a terrible salesperson. I'm not good at closing or anything like that. What I've been good at is explaining things to people, concepts and topics that were maybe more difficult, is making a way for them to understand what they're doing with their money, and not just investment advice, but financial planning. So there's
Yeah.
the long answer. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. I can totally see that. And working in the more advanced planning arena, I think that gift of being able to take something really complicated and simplify it for people to make a confident decision is probably much more beneficial than having a great closing capacity,
yeah.
you know?
Oh, and there's so much jargon too. I mean, I still catch myself. I'll say something and I'll have to say, wait a minute, I got to back up and translate that word into English.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. I didn't realize we had so much in common. I was actually a pre-law student and had
Oh,
interviewed a number of lawyers right before I was about to go to law school, and ended up bailing on it. I didn't take the long route to figure out. My first place that I landed was financial services, actually,
huh.
instead of law. But so I didn't realize we had that in common. That's really cool. Known you all these
Yeah.
years and didn't know we both left law and medicine
How about that?
to get
Yeah.
out. But
Yeah.
yeah, same thing.
We're disappointing our mothers, right?
I
They all want
know.
to be doctors and lawyers, right?
Yeah. Well, nowadays, I mean, I'm sure you can look back now and go, wow, dodged a bullet in the medical world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay. So this is around early 90s you began?
I started at New York Life. It was in 1990, and I lasted there for 5 years. Everything, they have one tool, life insurance, disability insurance, and everything looks like a nail to that hammer to them. And it's got to be just their product. Not to disparage it, it's a great product. I mean, you need life insurance, disability insurance. Important. It's important to have the moat around your financial castle, but I needed to be independent. I needed to, and I quickly got my securities licenses and worked toward a more well-rounded sort of thing I could do, and then eventually changed broker dealers and ended up kind of an independent financial advisor with an independent broker dealer. So I'm not an employee, just a independent contractor with them, and they look over my shoulder to keep me compliant and everything. So
Yeah. And
yeah,
that was pretty common. I mean, in that time in the industry, there were a lot less full scale financial planners who were independent, a lot of captive agents and captive brokers.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean the whole industry was Merrill Lynch and the wirehouses and all these people that are and still are employees of their companies, and so they have inventory and they have product to sell, and it was all commission, very little on the fee side. And that whole thing has changed now. Everybody is now, I mean, there's a big movement toward independence. There's a big movement toward fees instead of commissions, putting yourself on the same side of the table as the client, getting paid a percentage of assets under management instead of getting paid based on how much activity occurs in the client's account. Is a huge difference. It's moving in the right direction for that.
Yeah. And I've started to see some organizations that now only compensate relative to assets under management on the upside, and they freeze compensation if there's downtime, which I think is
Yeah,
appropriate. I always felt bad in the years that I was in it where, if I was making anything on my assets under management and we went backwards, I'm like, that's not right. I felt bad. Like, there's nothing I can do
yeah.
about it.
There's
That's,
another there's another group getting compensated on an like a contingency, not a contingency, but what do you call it? Like you have these young people that don't have much assets under management. So if you're getting paid as a percentage of that, you're not getting paid. But they're used to paying $100 a month for their cable or their phone or whatever. So you get them on for $100 a month as a retainer, and now you're getting paid something to give them financial advice and investment advice, and that's another model now too.
yeah,
So
that's awesome. I didn't know
um,
about that. That's awesome.
yeah,
So obviously I invited you on the show because I see everything that you do. You're driven by this ethos, and your faith guides a lot of your decision making. I see it in how you run your business. I know you most from both, our time together in studying the Word and kind of being part of a mastermind group, but also in we originally met, I think, on a gym floor.
That's right. Yeah.
So I see how you're committed to just even your own development personally outside of your profession, right? And everything about you screams just a quality of life decision making, and it's very clear that you're driven by a higher purpose. And I would easily say that you have a very servant-led spirit. So tell me a little bit about inside the confines of just your profession, since we're already on this topic. How does that play out? How do you deal with your clients because of that? How do you choose staffing? I know we've had numerous conversations in the past that I think would be great to share with the audience relative to difficult times when it comes to HR stuff. How we make decisions from an HR level that are both compliant as well as wise, let's say biblically.
Well, that's a huge topic there. I can't say I remember the specific conversations we've had to address those. I can talk about a couple of things HR related right now. Just maybe the decision making that's gone into how we've reacted to the lockdowns that the government's imposed on us here, and the virus that kind of precipitated those the felt need to shut down businesses. I have a staff of actually 4 people right now besides myself. I also have another 15 advisors that I supervise and keep them compliant. Look over their shoulder, make sure they're doing the right things on behalf of the broker dealer. So those guys are much more remote. They don't always come into the office. I can review their files electronically. They can do their own thing, and we give some guidance and advice to them. As far as my staff goes, we looked at the situation early on, and we happen to have built up a pretty good technology foundation, be able to do things and try to be really forward thinking as well in the area of automation. So before COVID came, I had one employee working from home full time anyway. And there's this big hurdle. Well, what if she's sitting there goofing off all day? Well, I'm going to know that eventually. And besides that, what if she's sitting there and goofing off all day in the office? I'm not going to sit behind her and make sure anyway, make sure that happens. So you have to have a trust for your employees. And in the interview process and the hiring process, it's always been the most successful for me to look for people that I like and trust, as opposed to if it's either or, it's not always that way. Having all of this great experience, I have 2 of my employees that are high school graduates that are great at what they do, and if I got somebody as a college graduate from an unrelated major, these guys are doing way better than that person. Now they've gained experience along the way. It's like the baseball team hiring the athlete instead of the position. They're gonna draft the great athlete, or the football team or whatever, and then they're gonna train them into the position, and that's been working really well. So we have these really good employees that I really trust, and so I was able to shift over to having them work from home really easily because of the technology we have here. To give you an idea, we went to a paperless system that sounds old now, right? Well, we did it in 2001. We got rid of all our file cabinets, all our paper, everything in 2001. And I didn't know anybody else doing it at that point. We had to teach our compliance department how to deal with this new way of doing business. And they eventually, well, that's a whole nother story. But anyway, so when the COVID hit, just the virus itself, I said, okay, everybody's working from home. My staff, I'll still come into the office, and that allowed them to be able to do the work remotely. We shifted over, and we meet every morning at 9:00 on Zoom or something like that, web meeting, and we're able to keep up with our our daily tasks and the things we're getting accomplished. And so that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question or not, but that's where we have, I involve them all in decision making. I say, they have complete, I guess, freedom to call me on things, and they feel like they do. I feel like they do that a lot. So I hope there's a humility that allows for criticism and growth.
Yeah.
So.
And like you said, you're managing performance, not, minutes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
and a lot of
exactly.
that comes from that freedom of the original trust that you determined.
Yeah.
So while we're still in your practice, if somebody isn't working with a professional financial advisor, what should they look for?
Oh, okay. Well, it's always dangerous to have absolutes and to say this is anybody that has this designation is going to be great. You can't really say that. Or anybody that charges by this method is going to be awesome. I think there are some tendencies though that might be good to look for, and some things that can help. I think the certified financial planner designation is definitely a separator. It's not just a license. It's a course that takes a long time to get the designation. It took me a couple of years to do it, and then there's a final exam that takes a day and a half. It's not an easy thing to do, and that's a separator, I think. And there's a whole set of ethics that goes along with that CFP designation, CFP Certified Financial Planner. So that's one thing I think is good to look for as a separator.
Do you
But you could
think
be
the
good
other
without it.
Do you think the other advanced designations, like chartered financial consultant, are they on par? And not to get into this big debate, because I'm sure we could go down this for hours, but are they roughly similar, or is there a big difference?
Actually, there's a huge kind of, I won't say debate, but topic of industry interest in all of the different designations. There's tons of them out there, and some of them are a weekend course. Chartered financial consultant is one it's on par with CFP, but I think because it's so much associated, that and CLU, chartered life underwriter, both come through the insurance industry. So there's kind of that um, baggage it carries with it. Although the topics are similar, the level of education is similar. I would say a CHFC is just as qualified as a CFP.
Okay, yeah, just different industry kind of foundations.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I was just
And if
curious.
and CLU would be a separator for someone who's dealing specifically with insurance.
Yeah,
Again, that's another one that's really good. But there's dozens of others that are just dotting the landscape now. I think that you could say there's some specialty ones that I'm starting to look at a little bit. Some involving like divorce planning and things like that. But obviously, if you want an attorney that's going to work on your trust, you want them to be an estate attorney and specialize in that. So there's specialties too.
yeah.
But in financial services there are as well.
Okay, so well educated, has earned a
Yeah,
designation.
yeah.
Are there?
I
I was
think
just thinking as you
experience
were
is
talking.
probably good.
Yeah,
I mean, if you've been through a couple of business cycles and market cycles, that's probably a good thing to have because you've seen it and lived through it. That's good. So someone with maybe 10 years of experience at least would be good. I think as far as the way they charge, that is, I think, becoming more and more significant, fee versus commission. And we touched on that earlier, that the commission advisor, and this is just investment advice now, it's helping you pick your investments. If the old stockbroker method was a sales situation where the stockbroker got paid based on how much transactional business occurred. So he might be managing your stock portfolio, but there's an incentive for him to change it. And it's illegal to churn, but that incentive still existed, right?
mm-hmm.
And if it's mutual funds, they might have had A shares or B shares at the time, or C shares, and there's then these handcuffs that keep you from moving outside of a fund family to a different fund family, and that might limit the if he's a real advisor that's really interested in saving you money and not charging a lot of commissions, that might handcuff them from moving to a different fund that's going to cause you to have a new front end load. So that whole system has been changing, and there's more and more people working off of a fee basis where it's just simply most common is a percentage of assets under management. So if my clients' assets grow or decline, I'm riding right along with them because I'm getting paid a percentage of that. I get paid less if our account goes down. I get paid more if it goes up. So that's more me on the same side of the table. I can work with a much broader choice of investments for them. So that's good too. Those are all that the way someone gets compensated is not necessarily mean that they're good or bad, but there are potential conflicts of interest, and that has been actually a huge thing that's just going to be implemented on our industry coming at the end of this month. This is regulation best interest, because the standard of care for the commission advisor had been suitability. It just has to be suitable to the investor. It doesn't matter how much the advisor gets paid for that annuity or whatever. It was just, is it suitable for that person? Now it's changing over to being, is it in the best interest of that person? Sounds like legal terms. What's the difference? Fiduciary, whatever. Well, it's changing everything in how we do things, and a big part of it's going to be just flood of documentation and disclosure documents. It's probably going to feel like you're signing up for a mortgage when you get, those big stacks of everybody signing, and it's like, what does that mean? I don't know. It's, but there's going to be a lot more paperwork. I think the lawyers will make money for sure.
They always do, right? Yeah. Okay. Like I mentioned, I first saw you on a gym floor. That's how gym floor.
Gym, yeah.
on the floor of specifically a CrossFit box.
Yeah.
And certainly got to appreciate your just drive and your intensity with how you approach, your fitness as well. When did that start? Tell us a little bit about your athletic background and where all that drive comes from.
Okay, that's kind of a fun story. I think I guess I'd say I'll look at myself as kind of an average athlete. I was, high school football and basketball, college, just a couple at the beginning, a year of college football, and then I played some volleyball in college as well. I was kind of their project. They let me on the men's team at Cal Poly, let me practice, but I didn't get to play in the game. So they said, you're a football player trying to make it here, and you're decent, but you're not that good yet. So then they cut the men's program right when that was starting. So did some volleyball there. After college, it was like, well, what do I do to stay active? And it was mostly just running. And I did a lot of running, ran 4 marathons. So it was long distance running, right? And that was meditative. I loved running in the hills and the trails, but I started to feel like, this, you get injuries running. It's the repetitive use. It's like hamstring there, plantar fasciitis there, and besides that, what are you doing for your upper body? You're just running. You're not really well rounded. Maybe your flexibility is not that great. Then I kind of thought, okay, well, I'm going to start mountain biking. Looks fun, and I did that for a while, and I still do that. I like that a lot, but I still was just kind of one dimensional. And then it was 2007. I saw this article in a fitness magazine, and I thought it was about this new thing called CrossFit, and I thought that looks cool, and it's free. I get to just go to their website and I get programming, and there's videos, and I can learn about movement, and I learned about Olympic weightlifting. I learned about gymnastics. I learned about nutrition. I learned the methodology there was amazing. And if anybody asked me about it, I had to spend 5 or 10 minutes explaining, because back in 2007, nobody had a clue what it was.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now everybody knows, and it's actually becoming. There's the recent news about it is kind of being something maybe you don't want to be as associated with, but the methodology is still fantastic. And so I started doing that, and it gave me. You work on these. They defined fitness for the first time, and there's 10 areas of fitness that they defined, and people would just, before that, they just say, are you fit, are you in shape, or maybe they look at your weight and say that, or your markers in your blood, or your blood pressure, cholesterol, whatever. But what does that say about fitness? What about strength, and what about stamina? What about balance?
All right, sorry about that. We're back. Okay, so you were defining or explaining how, for the first time, the concepts behind CrossFit were defining what fitness was. So if you want to pick up from there.
Well, yeah, I think that the original article I read was "What is Fitness?" And in that article, I think it was from 2002. I picked it up and I read it, and it was the first time I saw that kind of this attempt at a scientific and physics approach to your workouts, and they instead of just saying, oh, you're a strength and conditioning coach, or you're either fit or you're not fit, they had these 10 areas of fitness to define it and categorize different areas. And it was strength and stamina, and there was balance and agility and
accuracy, I think was one of them.
Accuracy. Yeah, all these different areas of fitness that kind of made sense to me. And then they're talking about when you're, the physics formulas for force and for power, and things that you could measure. And now all of a sudden, not just how much weight's on the bar, but how much are you moving quickly. And when your workouts when they put a stopwatch on your workout, and you're saying, okay, how many of these can you do in 20 minutes, or how fast can you complete this task? Now there's this competition edge to things, and competition mostly with yourself. I mean, I'm not among the best in the world at this, but it's fun to put yourself out and see how you compare with others too. So that's fun. And if you do an exercise once, and the next time you come back to it and you do it again, you're going to want to try and do a little bit better at it, and that adds intensity. And that's been a fun part of it.
Yeah. So, well, I think you might be selling yourself a little bit short. You had a couple brushes with some pretty high level areas of qualification.
Yeah.
I know you didn't step on a games floor in July or anything, but
so just for those that don't know, the way you qualify for the CrossFit Games at a master's level is in the current way, up until it's changed a little bit, but you there's a CrossFit Open, and you do 5 weeks of different tests each week, and if your score is high enough and you're in the top 200 in the world, then you do an online qualifier that is usually 4 or 5 additional tests done over a weekend. So I got close to the top 200 once or twice, but that's as close as I came to it. But
I can appreciate that. But think about it. We're talking worldwide. You got close to the top 200 in your age group worldwide. That's
okay.
Come on, that's pretty impressive.
I'll tell you, I felt great. I'm 59 right now, 59 and a half, and I had Sunday, I had a 30-year-old and a 25-year-old over to my house to work out, and I held my own. I'll say that, and I know one of them's going to be very sore this week, so that feels good, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you got exposed to this new concept of really broad training concepts, to be good at everything, not to be just a strength person, not just to be an endurance person, not just to be a speed person, but
to be ready for everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And so since then, obviously you've enjoyed, participating in that through those years, but since then, what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about, cycles of performance and injury prevention and recovery? And tell us a little bit about kind of those experiences.
I remember Kobe Bryant being interviewed once, and they were asking him, if you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be? And he said, stretch. Take care of yourself, because you're young, you recover, you don't get injured as much, you can do just about anything. And in the last 20 years, I've just seen I get injured more, not from CrossFit or anything. I just get injured more, just because my body it gets injured more. It's me. It's getting older. It's part of life, And when I do get injured, it takes longer to recover. But what I've found that I could do in running, I get a hamstring injury and I can't run anymore. Right? I can't move until that heals up. I can walk maybe, or I can whatever. But in CrossFit, I can say, oh, my hamstring's injured. I guess I can work on pull-ups now for a while, and my core or whatever. There's always some weakness that I can work on while something else is injured. So I think that both the frailty of my body aging, and but that's a part of my why too. That's part of why I do it, is because I want to be able to. I'm an older dad. I'm 59 and I have an 11-year-old daughter. I want to be able to, do stuff with her, and this allows me to do it. So my aging body, if you move it and continually move it with some kind of intensity, and you take care of it this way, you're going to be able to last longer in this aging process. But
Yeah.
there's the trade-off too. I mean, if you don't move, you lose it. If you do move, you're going to get injured at some point. And you're going to have to recover from that. So,
Yeah. You're reminding me
yeah,
of you're reminding me of Ido Portal's comment, we move because we can.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yep.
And if you don't, then don't expect to
You
move
lose
much.
it.
Yeah.
You age because you stop moving. You don't stop moving because you age, right? But I got to go surfing with my daughter this weekend. Last weekend, I rode bikes with her within the last week. So I can still take her. So it's not
That's
going to be
good. That's
long
good.
before she.
Yeah. Hey, we'll take what we can get. So,
Yeah.
I know you've been mentioned recently too. You've even changed up some of your training emphases because of just getting through some soreness and some physical
Yeah.
ailments, so to speak. Describe that kind of high level, just so people understand. As an example, when you get something that's holding you back, how do you modify?
Well, I just described with injury, if one part's not working, then, I'm going to try and work on those parts that are. And even if you have um, like say that left hamstring is or that left leg is broken, let's say, if you work the right leg, the body doesn't know that both sides are not getting worked out, and the blood flow goes to both, and the healing process takes shorter time. And so even if you're just changing up and doing one leg squats instead of both leg squats, that leg that you can't use is going to heal faster. I think that I had some injuries. I try to listen to my body a lot more. I wouldn't even call them injuries now. I've taken to doing a lot more uh, uh, stretching, rolling, activation work before the workout, and that I think is saving me. But also trying to listen a lot more closely to an ache or a pain. And so I think I was doing. I got on a tangent of my exercise because of an injury or something, where I was doing. Um, I know what it is. I did a vacation in Europe right before the COVID. I was in Italy until February 21st, and came back. And believe it or not, I ate poorly in Italy. I ate pasta, and I came back a little heavier than I wanted to be. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get back into this, but I had taken a couple of weeks off because you're traveling around. It's harder to work out, and especially in a foreign country. So I needed to kind of get back into it slowly. And I thought, I have a rowing machine. I'm going to row. And another weakness was my gymnastics. So I wanted to work on my pull ups. So I thought, I'm going to start rowing and doing pull ups just to kind of get my body back and ready to start doing more broad CrossFit stuff. And so I started doing that. And then the virus hit and stuff. And I'm kind of having to change a little bit. And I realized I was on this streak. I had done. I decided I wanted to do 6,000 meters rowing and 100 pull-ups each day. And the pull-ups are broken up. I'm not doing them all in one setting, but at first it took me all day, and then I was doing my 100 pull-ups before breakfast after 3 or 4 weeks, and then I realized I hadn't missed a day in like 2 months. Um, and actually, I made it out to 70 days on the pull-ups, and then all of a sudden, I got a pain in my elbow, and I thought, oh, I'm going to stop doing the pull-ups, and I stopped doing the pull-ups and shifted over to the rowing. But by then I was much better. I think cardiovascular, my engine was better, ready to go. I was still doing in between the rowing. I was doing push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. I was doing squats, and I was doing kind of body weight stuff. And then I decided, okay, now I want to start, because my strength was the weightlifting. That was my strength, and I could kind of put that on the shelf and focus on these other things. And I realized that my competition this year in the CrossFit Games was as a 59-year-old in the 55 to 60-year-old category. So in other words, my chances are slim to none to do very well. And next year I'd be transitioning to the 60 plus division for masters. So I thought, let's work on your weaknesses. It was engine and body weight stuff, and that's where I went with that. So that's kind of the thinking that goes through the mind of someone who has an inkling of competitive juices going in the CrossFit world. And you're smiling because you probably think the same way. So
Yeah, no, I just love hearing that, because there is so much we all have, no matter what it is, whether it's in our professional life, right? Or if it's in our fitness life, or it's in our family life, or our social lives, there's always something we can work on and pivot to, even if there's something that's a roadblock currently, right? So I'm just thinking off the top of my head right now, how many people are impacted professionally by the coronavirus, and yet for those people who are, this is a phenomenal time to pick up new skills, right? And all the online intellectual property that's out there that people can start digging into and acquiring for themselves. And to see that, played out and how you approach it, there's consistencies that I see across people of, you either have this mindset of like, just make the best of whatever, right? Or it's an excuse. And the people that strike me the most, obviously, I wouldn't have you on this show if you hadn't come across as a person who makes good decisions and is fueled by something bigger than you. The people like you are driven never by excuses don't drive anybody. That's a silly statement, but you're driven by something regardless of circumstance. You're going to make the most of it, right? So you had an obstacle and you're just navigating around it.
Well, you've said some key words there that I think I kind of are in the background of our conversation so far, but they haven't really come forward. I mentioned about missionary work in the past, and that missionary work was, as trying to help to point people toward Jesus, toward a Savior, right? And what is in the backdrop of everything I hope of everything that I do is Jesus. And that decision came early in my life, and my wife and I were talking about this recently, and we were in some kind of church group or something where someone had mentioned there was like a questionnaire or something, and like, do you consult the Bible in your decision making? And I thought, my wife and I were just kind of shocked by the question. It was like, not just decision making, but everything in our lives it comes from the root of that, of the Bible being our final authority, and of Jesus being our Savior, that gives us a hope and a rest in our lives, that we don't have to do it ourselves, that we have a Savior. So I think that as a backdrop makes it so that you can have a skeleton to hang everything on.
Yeah. No, that's I like the way you put that. I'm just struck at the moment by the setting that we find ourselves in. There's so much disunity. There's so much frustration. There's so much opposition. There's so much hate on a lot of levels, right? And
I'm not immune to that. I think if you have a heart, you're going to be frustrated and angry at times with what's going on around us. If you have thought about things and have any kind of philosophy of life or worldview, you're going to face those that don't have the same worldview or have a different philosophy of life. And
Yeah.
everybody has it. And some people are wrong. Or all of us are wrong. But
Right. Right.
I'm not a relativist. I know that the truth is out there. And so I think the first thing I want to do is pursue truth, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what Jesus had in mind when he was talking about casting pearls before swine. If you're involved in a conversation with someone who makes it clear they're not interested in truth, then maybe the conversation is not going anywhere. Maybe you just walk away. So if we're both trying to pursue truth, and if we're both trying to pursue goodness, and if we're both trying to look for beauty in life, truth, goodness, and beauty, then we can make progress. The other verse that I'm really looking at right now is Micah 6:8, right? That what does the Lord require of us but to do justice and love mercy and walk humbly. And I've heard it said that really we should look at those things backwards, that we should walk humbly and then seek mercy and then find justice. And so if we keep those things in the front of our mind, truth, goodness, beauty, humility, mercy, justice, but justice, boy, that's coming up a lot these days, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Well,
But if we
go
go ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to say, if we jump to justice before we get humble and merciful, then it's going to cause messes too.
Yeah, and on the backside of justice, right? Even if we start with humility and then mercy, and obviously there's consequences and there is justice. The Bible doesn't exclude justice,
No.
but on the other side of that also is, the Bible also gives that opportunity for redemption, right? And it doesn't just stop at justice. And
Yeah.
I think that might be a missing element. And again, some people might not be interested in anything more than justice, and it stops right there, period. And
Yeah.
but
And no forgiveness, right? Is
yeah,
that what you're getting at? Is that
well,
sometimes you can goof up and say the wrong thing, and everybody does.
yeah,
Everybody says the wrong thing at some point, and you could apologize and you could ask forgiveness. And there's groups out there that will not forgive. There are people out there that want justice above all, and their form of it, and you're never going to find love and mercy in them. It's just going to be, oh, I've got this guy on the run, and I'm going to chase him down and squash him and cancel him, right?
yeah.
um,
Although, you mentioned, I know there's a lot of drama in the CrossFit world, right? But just as an example, right? Whatever the correct justice is that comes out of that, right? And or whatever the consequences that leadership has to deal with as it plays
yeah.
out. I'm hoping also, because I know a lot of the CrossFit community, I'm hoping also that post justice and or even in the middle of the justice, there's an opportunity for hearts to be open to that leadership to move forward from a redemptive spot, to realize maybe the error of their heart or their ways or whatever, right? That doesn't mean that they will, but I really hope
Yeah.
that the community in general, and whatever the case might be, right? We're using this as a singled out example. I hope the community that's yearning for that justice can still have, because I think we're seeing a lot of it, right? Whatever the topic might be, injustice with police, inequality of income, or whatever the case might be. I hope that those who have this heart for final justice can also still, especially if you're considered part of the body of Christ, right? Have a heart to understand. Let's look for and offer and encourage a redemption story at the end of it, because it doesn't have to stop right there, right? And
Yeah.
culturally, I worry
Yeah.
that we stop at justice and don't allow the redemptive story to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I think those Christians that have been speaking out, I respect the most, are those that go back to the gospel. And the politics will change, and the politics will be there, and there's plenty to be tempted to argue on the areas of politics. But the gospel is about Jesus, and the gospel is about me being a sinful man and imperfect to the point of rebellion against my God, um, and the fact that Jesus paid the price for me, and that I don't have to do anything to earn His favor. I can't, and I can't add anything to what He's already done, and that just takes that's what I really think is meant by His burden is light. He in Matthew 11, right? That um, my burden is light. It's not all of these rules and regulations and things you have to do. He's done it all. But I feel like because of that, I want to, and I'm now empowered to live a life that honors Him more. And that's the struggle is personal, and I'm not going to be able to change individuals around me. I can just point the way. I can't change their heart, only the Holy Spirit can. I could just say, here, look at this is just an amazing way to live your life, free from the burdens of sin, and free from the justice of God really on me. I can I'm saved,
Yeah.
and that's a great feeling. So
Yeah. Fitness obviously carries with it a bunch of like life lessons, um, including spiritual life lessons, I believe. Have you pinpointed any that have touched you the most?
uh, go back to the beginning of that. Pinpointed life lessons that have to do with what?
Your spiritual, so fitness in general teaches us lots of life lessons. Sports does,
Oh,
fitness does.
fitness. Okay,
Yeah, sorry,
fitness. I missed
fitness.
that word at the beginning.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
So as fitness teaches us life lessons, including spiritual ones, have you come across any that have kind of been pinpointed to you poignantly?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't have anything at the top of my mind to answer that. I mean, there's the one about, that the fact that weightlifting and exercise, it kind of it breaks down your muscles first when you do it. It's breaking down muscle tissue, and that muscle tissue then in the days following, if you rest it, builds itself back up again stronger. And there's a spiritual lesson in that. That's an analogy to your exercising. But I think the spiritual lesson I've always read in the Bible about that your body is a temple. Take care of it, um, and that if you're healthy, you can go out and do stuff that makes a difference in the world. I mean, you can, if you're broken down and in bed, you're not you still can be totally effective in prayer for the world and for your brothers and sisters. But there's much more you can do if you're able to ambulate and get out and do stuff there. I think that we think about being we talk about this in our home about being givers and not takers, and I think being fit allows you to be more of a giver, more of a giver in the world around you. um, so though I guess those are some spiritual applications of fitness, um, off the cuff that I can think of. There's
Yeah.
probably
I like to
dozens or
throw
every.
tough questions out. It's okay. So,
I should have been ready for that.
it's all right. It's all right. If you contemplate the next 5 years of Jim Losey Jr.'s life, what would those 5 years need to contain for you to look back and say, I did those 5 years to the best of my ability? That came out the best I could have dreamed.
Um, I compartmentalize a lot, so I'll do that here. I want to the my relationship with Jesus is the most important, and the reason I'm here, I think, um, is to talk with other people about the hope that I have there. So I'd love to have in the next 5 years have made some kind of influence, some kind of difference in someone's life, being able to point them to the Savior. I'll say that first. But a close second is the influence I have on my daughter and my wife. I want to be an example. I want to be a leader in the home. I want to see my daughter go from in 5 years from 11 to 16. These are the
Get
years
ready.
of the,
Get ready.
I know she's a middle schooler now. She's an adolescent. She's a oh man. And so I want to maintain that relationship and improve it, and have that be something that my wife and I are a team on, and that our home becomes one that is a beacon, a light, salt in the world around us, in our neighborhood, our schools, and that we're in, and things like that. So those are, I think, so the making a difference in the world for Jesus, making a difference in my family for um, their betterment, and I think I think I'd like to continue to see the areas in myself that need improvement. And I'm learning so much at this time about my own pride and my own way of thinking that needs to grow, and there's things that I need to change in the way I think. And I'm trying to remain open to, like I said before, truth. What's truth? And what things, I know there's things I believe that are false and wrong. And I want to see those things, and not be so prideful to hold on to them, but really try and see changes in my own life, as far as the things that I always thought were right, but maybe they weren't. So,
Yeah, that's awesome. I like that answer. Last question. If there's only one more nugget of wisdom that you can share with our listeners who might never cross your path again, something that they can take with them, live by, and be blessed by, what's your nugget of wisdom?
okay, I could go two directions with that. If I were had the funny gene, I'd say something funny, but I'm too serious. So I'm going to say, um, my favorite verse in the Bible is Romans 8:1, and it says, "There is therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus." So that's it. There's no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. How about that?
I like that. That's the first time I've heard that one. I like that one. Very cool. Well, I know our time is limited here today, but I thank you very much for getting on and putting up with all our
You're welcome,
technical
brother.
difficulties along the way as well.
I hope it's helpful for somebody out there. And
Yeah, no, I think, these are ordinary messages, right? About how to go about living life. I'm just trying to highlight, we love to highlight, not to call you ordinary, but you're not a celebrity, right? You're not a government figure. You're what would be typically considered a typical person, regardless of what country you live in or what other, right?
what you're
And
trying to say is I'm pretty ordinary.
you're somewhat ordinary, but not in the way that you live your life. And like all of our guests, you certainly have a light of the Spirit that goes with you and is around you at all times. And you can tell your heart for people just in how you practice your work and how you interact with people on a gym floor. We didn't even get into, and we can possibly get into in future conversations, some of the work that you're doing charitably as well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I know. Our times are our enemy today. So I'll definitely bring you back, because I want to discuss not only how you're handling that personally, but I know it's a big part of how you advise clients who have that part in their life as well, and make that a big priority. So we'll dive further into that, but we'll make that part 2 with Jim Losey Jr.
All right.
That work?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like, oh dang, I really wanted to talk about that too. But
Yeah, we'll get you back on the calendar in a hurry so we can follow up with part 2.
all right.
All right. Well, thank you for your time, Jim. I love you.
Thank you, Chad. All right. I love you too.
All
Bye.
right. Talk to you soon.